Welcome to Spoonful of Strength, a podcast for people with chronic illness and the ones who love them, where we talk all things chronic. Here's your host, Rachel and Tina. Welcome to Spoonful of Strength. We're happy to be with you here today. And we have a great week coming up this week, as this week and next week we have double episodes of our Spoonie stories. So you'll get 2 interviews per week for the next couple weeks. So we're excited to get this started, and I am excited to be back. Thank you, Tina, for holding the fort down for me.
Oh, sure. That was easy peasy. So I did just realize that this is our first recording since you had your surgery. How did everything? we have some stories. How did everything go for you?
It went well. I will say I was going into the surgery and I was told you have 2 options. We won't know until we get in there. You could either be in an immobilizing sling for 6 weeks with like a 3-month recovery, or you could be in a sling for 2 weeks with an easier recovery. And I got the 2-week recovery. They didn't have to repair the tear. They had a lot of work, I guess, to do in there. I had some fraying in some tendons. They had to shave down some bones. They had to, I guess I had impingement, which means things were pinching the muscles and the tendons. And so they did a lot of repair, but I'm very blessed that that it ended up being only, 2 weeks in this beautiful sling. But, and I haven't been in too much pain. I haven't taken pain medicine beyond Tylenol 500. I haven't taken anything else beyond that. So, I'm not in a ton of pain. I can handle it. And every day I'm getting more use of my arm, and I've been in physical therapy for about a week now. And so everything's going really well.
Good. Do you feel like it's impacting your mobility as much as you anticipated it would, or is?
I don't think it has as much as I was worried that it was. I feel like I'm pretty much the same as I was beforehand. The only thing we're having problems with is, for some reason, which again, I got the infamous, well, that doesn't normally happen, or that's kind of odd. But, I was getting either doing a lot of stretching and things. And I told her my arm, I'd have a hard time like lifting up just my hand. So like, even to type, I have to help my hand lift it onto the computer, and then my fingers can do the work and things like that. And she says sometimes that the surgery can be traumatic to the body and it almost shuts down some of the muscles and things. And so we're working to get that back, because that's a big thing, is just being able to raise my hand, to be able to do some things. But we're getting there. And slowly but surely, today they measured me, and I've made like 20% gains from last week on some of the range of motion. So we're
awesome.
getting there. And overall wasn't too bad.
Good. Very good.
Yeah. So the funniest part of the surgery actually came as I was waking up. You're waking up and you're opening your eyes and looking around. And once I had my eyes open for a little bit more consistent, I said, man, my right eye is killing me. It's watering, it's painful. And the lady goes, oh, okay. And she goes and gets a syringe of saline, and she comes over and she squirts some saline in there. And she said, did that help? And I said, no, it's just, it hurts so bad. And she goes, oh, well, we try not to do this, but you probably just scratched your cornea in surgery. And I was like, well, how does that happen? And she said, well, sometimes they might drag a tool or a cord or something and accidentally scratch your eye. And I'm like, she's just very nonchalant about it. Just like, you know, yeah, she's like, you'll feel better tomorrow. It'll be fine. And they put an eye patch on me. So I get home and Tina texts me later that night. She's like, how are things going? And I send her a picture of me recovering with this big old eye patch. And I think her response was the same as everybody else's. What the hell happened?
Happened there? Of course, when I was thinking about it like the next day, and I'm just like, I have this vision. I'm like, was she laying there with her eye? Like when we go under, are we laying there with our eyes open? Like, like so like that just put a weird visual. I'm like, great. Like that's just kind of weird if you lay there with your eyes open. So
Well, especially when the surgery is so close to your eye. I mean, how close your shoulder is, and they're using, power tools and things to, you
yeah,
know, shave
yeah,
down uh, my bones and all of that. That they wouldn't think about putting sunglasses on me or something.
yeah. Put some goggle, eye protection of some
Yeah,
sort.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, but
Thankfully, the eye
luckily,
heals very quickly.
yeah, the next afternoon, I wore an eye patch the rest of the night, and the next morning, it was feeling much, much better. So that was, if that's the only hiccup I had, then I can take it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
How was your week last week?
Um, it was overall, it was actually pretty good. We went out to Lake George, up to Lake George, New York for family reunion. It was usually we like to spend a few more extra days up there than what we were able to this year. But I found out, as you know, the night before your surgery, I found out the hard way that I am apparently I am now allergic to yellow jacket stings. I got stung by one 3 different times on my like ankle and my elbow and then on my wrist, and ended up having an anaphylactic reaction to that. So now I'm a proud EpiPen carrier. So
Yeah,
it's
that
just like what
I
what else is life gonna throw at us?
you just have to try and up me, right? You're just
I know,
trying
right?
to compete.
Yep. Yep.
And yep, yeah, you got that bad. But oh, I'm so glad that it turned out better than it could have. But it
Yeah.
was,
Yep. It didn't impact my airway, but everything, like I broke out in hive, my whole body hives, itching, sneezing, and then the sites of the stings were super hot, super inflamed. It
yeah.
was just a weird reaction. I did pinpoint where the nest was. Well, actually, there were 4 nests underneath our
Oh wow.
deck on the support beams from the deck. I
Mhm.
like peeked under there the next day. I had been seeing a couple of them. What had happened was I noticed, and I didn't think anything of it that night. I had seen some near our steps, going in a little space between our steps and our house, leading down to the carport one day. And it was just a couple. I hit it with Raid. I saw dead ones, and then I wasn't really seeing any more after that. So I just kind of didn't think much of it. And we don't use those steps very often, but that night I happened to walk down to throw something away on the carport where our trash cans are. And then, when I walked down, I must have stirred a couple of them up. And then when I walked back, one of them chased me down and nailed me. So last night, I didn't even tell you, I haven't told you this yet either. So last night, when I peeked under there the next day, I saw four nests on the posts, and 2 of
Mhm.
them I could reach without having to get under the deck. So I went out and sprayed those like 2 or 3 times. I've hit it to make sure that they're dead. And then last night after dark, they always say at night, wait until closer to dark, because then they're all back. They've all returned to their nest. So I went under there once I was sure that the 2 closest ones were dead. I went in underneath with two other armed with two cans of Raid, but I was so nervous about having to actually crouch down and get under there to be able to reach him that
Mhm.
I like put my snow pants, my snow
Oh,
pants and my big puffy jacket and my boots on out there to
oh
go
my
out
gosh.
and take them out. But I haven't seen any of them flying around this morning, so or today at all. So I think I got rid of them, but
Like the
um
marshmallow
yeah.
man going
Mhm.
after him, right?
Yeah, yep.
Oh
And
my gosh.
there wasn't any activity out there last night either. So, but
Oh,
yeah, I was like,
that's
all right,
good.
y'all are going out.
Did you get your EpiPen then?
Yeah, the day after. So that happened on Monday night at
Good.
like 8:30. And honestly, looking back, I probably should have gone to the hospital that night, but since I was breathing fine, I just didn't think that it wasn't I didn't realize that an anaphylactic reaction is much more than just your airway being impacted.
Yeah.
I always thought that that type of reaction was that you always have breathing, that it causes you not to be able to breathe. So I didn't really realize until later after the fact that that's what was going on. So the next day I went to the doctor to get checked out, and that's when they prescribed the EpiPen. So
Well, that's good. I'm glad you've got that.
yeah,
Glad
yeah.
you've got that.
So it's just weird to now. I usually carry a small purse, so now I have to carry a big purse, and of course,
Yeah.
and then every little flying insect that wants to zip past me, puts me in a small panic.
You
So
got
it's like,
PTSD.
I know. Eventually, I know that I'll get over it. And now that I have an
Yeah.
EpiPen, I do feel a little bit better. But I'm just like, I love being outside in nature, and I hate that now I'm like, I have a little bit of low-key anxiety about being out there when bugs are flying around. So I'm anxious for the fall when things stop.
So let's go ahead and bring Kate in and welcome her to the show. So, welcome, Kate. Thanks for joining us today. Um, let's just start by having you introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, my name is Kate. I am 30 years old and I live in Monterey, California. I'm an occupational therapist. So basically, I help people do their everyday activities, which is perfect for my journey, my health journey. Um, let's see, the things I like to do. I was very active growing up. I love sports. I am a runner, tennis player. I love soccer. I love to learn new languages. It's a big hobby of mine. I actually, Spanish was my first language. Like I knew more Spanish than English as a kid because my grandma's from Costa Rica. So
Wow.
yeah, so I knew more Spanish while learning English at the same time because my parents only spoke English. And now I'm learning German. I'm also a writer. I am currently writing a memoir, which has been a really hard process, but very like therapeutic, helping me like process everything that's going on with my health.
Tell us a little bit about the your early signs of when you felt that something might be going on health wise.
Well, there were subtle signs growing up, but like back in the 90s, like nobody really looked for some of these things. One of the big red flags was the way I sat. So I was a W sitter, which means that my feet would like go behind me, like because that was like the most comfortable position. But nobody like really thought much about it. And then I feel like when I was a teenager, I started noticing that I looked different from other kids. My legs were like crooked. And so I learned how to adjust the way I stood so I wouldn't stand out. But then when I was around 13 years old, I started noticing like the knee pain and some pain in my lower back. And like it crossed my mind, like I wonder if other people like have this kind of pain. Like I've had it for like even before then, but that was kind of when it like dawned on me that something might be wrong. Um, and so I didn't really say much. Like I was actually at that point I was running track. on my middle school team, and I mentioned it to one of my coaches, and he was like, "Oh, like you might want to get your knee checked out," but then I like never did. So I just kind of went along thinking that like this was a normal thing or it was just growing pains. And then it wasn't until I was in college when I really started noticing how bad the pain was getting and how different things were than like my roommates. The way they did things was different. They didn't have pain all the time. So that was when my journey all started.
So at what point did you, because you're talking about your pain started at 13, college, you're 18, 19, somewhere around there. At what point then did you actually go to your doctor, and like what were the steps of first meetings with doctors? Did you see a chiropractor or an orthopedic doctor? Like how did they put everything together?
So the first place I went was a chiropractor because I was training for a half marathon and I like had this really bad like low back pain, but it was like radiating into my hip. So I went to the chiropractor and they adjusted my back like a lot. However, I didn't know this at the time, but because of my condition, that like cracking my hips like that wasn't actually helpful. It was making things worse. It's because I didn't know this at the time, but I had impingements in my hips. So anytime like they would do an adjustment, like, with like my femur or anything like that, like it was probably tearing my labrum, which is like the cartilage that goes around the hip joint. Um, but I had no way of knowing that I had that issue because I hadn't had any x-rays on the hip. So I ended up like I finished the chiropractor appointments and I felt slightly better, but like I still had a lot of pain. And it actually, I think what really started this whole like the whole process of like, okay, the chiropractor wasn't working, I probably should go to an orthopedic doctor. Was I was doing a pilgrimage in Costa Rica with my cousin, and it was 16 miles. We had to walk 16 miles. And I I mean, and I was running, like I was running half marathons and stuff, but like for whatever reason, like my hip just decided like enough is enough during that pilgrimage. So when I got back home to the US, I made an appointment with an orthopedic doctor, and that's when I like had the x-rays and an MRI to see what was actually going on in the hip. And that was when I was diagnosed with the impingements and the labral tear.
Yeah.
But but that didn't end there because I mean, yes, I had those impingements and like I had the tears and they were fixed. I actually had 3 surgeries to fix them. But what was happening was the orthopedic surgeons that I had gone to see were only really looking at my hip joint and not my whole leg. So after those 3 surgeries, I still had a lot of pain. And at one point, I just kind of accepted like maybe this is my reality. Like maybe this, like I'm supposed to have this. I was told things like, it's probably just residual pain from the surgeries, but I was like, well, it's been like 4 years. Like I think that should be over by now. And that I decided to look more into what could be causing like the whole alignment issue because like I knew my legs were crooked and I had pain in my hips and my knees and my ankles, and I thought it was a whole leg issue rather than just a joint. So then I did my research and I found a really good doctor who diagnosed me with Miserable Malalignment Syndrome, which basically means the bones in my legs are abnormally rotated. And to correct this, I had to have procedures called osteotomies, where they cut the bone and then they straighten it and then hold it, the pieces of your bone together with a plate, sometimes a rod, but I have plates and screws. During this podcast, I actually have a broken femur right now. Recovering
Oh my God.
from, oh, that one's brutal. The femur is brutal.
When did you
Wow.
have
Wow.
surgery on that?
I had it 10 weeks ago. However, I actually just had an appointment with my surgeon, and it's very delayed with healing. So it's still definitely broken.
In general, for a person like a person without a health issue, it's a long process to heal with it being such a large bone. So I can imagine, what the recovery you have ahead of you.
Did you know Spoonful of Strength is not just a podcast? We have an Instagram page called Spoonful of Strength where you can see clips of our upcoming episodes, learn about different illnesses, and we share other people's stories. We also have an Etsy shop where you can shop for clothing such as t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies. You can find candles and mugs and tumblers and blankets. You can find it all. We support all chronic illnesses, and the great thing is, if you find a t-shirt in our shop for multiple sclerosis, we can change that for lupus or Ehlers-Danlos or any other illness that you need. Everything is customizable in our shop. Use the code podcast for 20% off your entire order.
How many surgeries have you had?
I've had a total of 9, but the first 3 were the impingement ones. So I've had 6 with my current surgeon. And so that, like, those surgeries include like the osteotomies where they break the bone. And then I had my hardware taken out in my right femur and tibia. And I've also had a labral reconstruction because even after all of those labral repairs I had, because my alignment was off, like it wasn't helping my labrum. Like it was still like creating problems with the labrum. So they had to take it out completely and use a cadaver labrum. So I had like some protection in that joint.
Is it a situation where once they get everything taken care of, then you're going to be pain free, or is it something that, like, are you more susceptible to injuries, or like what is the outlook for that?
The outlook is pretty good. So it's really interesting because now I know like what it was like to have one leg that is straight and one that isn't or wasn't or partially. It's like halfway there. So with the right leg, I'm like, I don't feel that pain anymore. I don't feel that same pain. So I'm really excited, like once my left leg is all fixed up, to like finally know what it feels like to have 2 legs that are pain-free. And the thing was, like, even though when I was 13, I noticed that pain, I don't think I ever really knew a life without it. Like the way I'm like thinking back, like even as a preschooler, the way I sat, like I was trying to get comfortable. Like,
you were adjusting subconsciously without even realizing what you were, why.
Right. Yeah. And I was like always one of those kids like in school, like sitting in like contorted positions, just trying to get comfortable, even though like I wasn't aware of it, like I wasn't calling it pain. I still think it was there. And it wasn't until I was a teenager where I was kind of able to verbalize it, like, hey, I think something's off.
Yeah.
As a younger in those toddler years, did it have an impact on meeting those milestones, the mobility milestones, as far as walking? Were you a late walker or?
No, I met all of my milestones, if not on time, like early maybe. Like I was athletic. Like I played all the sports I could possibly play. I was super competitive in some of those sports, like as a runner, signing up for all kinds of races, and in tennis, I went pretty far with that too. I thought it was normal. And I played because that's what I wanted to do. That's what I fell in love with.
Yeah. So you had a really active lifestyle before the diagnosis. Are you like, what is your activity level now that you're kind of working through all the surgeries and everything? Do you see yourself being able to get back to that point?
I definitely, that it's my ultimate goal to get back to that. I know some people might think that that's crazy, like after all I've been through, but I I feel like I can do it. Like if I believe that I can, and if I'm really smart about it, like not ignoring what is going on in my body. So if I have pain, like, and I know it's the bad type of pain, like I'm gonna stop, or
Yeah.
I'm, gonna get the treatment that I need. I will work on strengthening rather than running. Like I will not run as often as I used to. Like there's so many changes that I can make. Um, and that's definitely what I plan on doing. But now, like since I'm recovering, I really focus on my, all the things in physical therapy. I like to get in the pool and like I mean, usually it's for the first like 8 weeks. I'm not really supposed to put weight on my leg after an osteotomy, but even just getting in the pool and then like moving my leg around, trying to get that range of motion is really helpful. Um, and yeah, I definitely like, I make it a point every day to move my body in the way that it can, but I really have to listen and like not push it too far and do what I'm told.
Yeah. That's a path a lot of chronic illness people have a hard time with. And I think it's really good. You mentioned having that goal of running. I think that that's really good to have a plan of where you want to be, because otherwise, you can sit back and wait for everything to get better, or you can work your body, move your body to prepare for a time down the road where you can enjoy that again. So I think
Yeah.
that's really good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also already going into the mindset of, okay, I want to start running again, but I know I'm going to have to make adjustments to do that, because
Right.
one thing that we've talked in the past a lot about is just how difficult it can be to adjust to that new normal, and having to shift your mindset around, okay, I'm better, and so everything is back the way it used to be, versus, and then you get disappointed, or
I think
struggle.
like I learned how to dissociate from my body. Like I think that was like how I coped as a kid and in adolescence and even into early adulthood. I just ignored it. Like I ignored the pain, but now it's like I have to reverse that. I need to learn how to listen to my body, and then like once I understand, like once I know what it needs, like I need to act on it. Like I need to give my body that or take a
Mhm.
break or whatever.
Mhm. I think a lot of people with the chronic pain, we just learn how to power through things. And
Right.
so it's easy to get back into the habit of not losing that awareness of what you're going through, and just trying to go back to the old time of the old mindset of, oh, this is how my life is going to be. I'm just going to have to deal with it. So
How did you deal with everything? Because we're talking about, 17 years that you've been dealing with this. How do you deal with it mentally? What are some things that have gotten you through just on the mental side of it?
Um, I mean, well, I guess I want to start by saying that there was a time when I completely just like gave up. Like I hit bottom. Like it was actually after my first osteotomy. So this was when they broke my right femur, and I struggled so hard mentally. I like gave up my power to people that I mean, it's my power. They shouldn't they shouldn't take it. But like with other health professionals who, you know, didn't understand my condition or were like saying things to me that I didn't find appropriate. And I just kind of let them do it and just like, okay. And I gave up on my recovery, which is very unlike me, very unlike me to just give up on these kinds of things.
A lot of us with years and years of pain, it just gets to you. And it just is like, I'm so tired of waking up every day being in pain. And I'm so tired of having to deal with this. Is there anything that you've done that kind of helps you when you are overwhelmed?
I have been thinking in terms of alignment. Like that is my big word. So now I'm not only considering my physical alignment of my leg bones, but also mentally and emotionally as well. So for me, this looked like actually dealing with my feelings, like whether it's like, the happy feelings, the joyful feelings, or if it's anger at my situation, or if it's like the grief of feeling like you've lost independence, or you lost the things that were once important to you. So I really, after I hit bottom, after my femoral osteotomy, I decided to really focus on things that bring me purpose and like meaning in my life. So for me, that looks like, being able to write like what I'm going through. And like that has helped me process some of those really difficult feelings, but also learning more about my growth and my overall alignment.
Do you feel that your decision to become an occupational therapist impacted by what you've been going through?
Yeah, I definitely do. What's really interesting is when I was a kid, I was probably around 10 years old. I really wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. And this is, I like can't even believe it, but I wanted to help, like I wanted to be able to perform these osteotomies on people that have dwarfism and they have bowed legs. I don't really know why I wanted to do that, but I think it must have been like kind of like an intuition or my way of like trying to make sense of what I was going through too. And I just didn't make that connection until like last year. Like I remembered, oh wow, that was what like I wanted to do. I really wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon.
Wow.
So but I now know that I made the right decision. I wouldn't have, being an orthopedic surgeon wouldn't have worked out very well for me, especially with my condition, because, standing too long is really painful. And then having to go through all these surgeries, hard. But I'm very glad that I became an occupational therapist because I have learned not only to help other people do the things that are meaningful to them during their day, but I've also been able to take what I've learned and use that on myself.
That's awesome. You had sent us a little bit of information before we met today, and you talk a little bit about advocacy for, getting the test and the things that you needed done. Can you tell us a little bit about how Facebook helped you kind of get to your diagnosis?
So I had been bouncing from doctor to doctor trying to figure out what was going on with my legs, because after 3 surgeries, like I just needed to find an answer. So I had joined a Facebook group. I think it was like a runners and hip injuries group. And I joined that after my first surgery, my very first surgery. And I posted a picture when I was still having pain of my legs and just said, like, does anybody have something like this? Like, any direction you can point me in to find a surgeon who can help me, like, please let me know. And somebody actually commented and told me to join the Miserable Malalignment Facebook group. So I joined that and I posted the picture of my legs, and there were so many comments. Like, people were saying, yeah, like, you look like us, and you need to find a surgeon who looks at your entire leg and who will order a CT scan, because your bone alignment doesn't show up as accurately like on an X-ray or an MRI. Like, you need a CT scan to be able to see like the exact angles. So I had to advocate so hard I tried just so many doctors, but a lot of them weren't like willing to order a CT scan, because they said that like my legs, like, I'm worried about like the looks of my legs, not like the alignment isn't the issue. And I was really offended by that, because obviously like I was in enough pain to to keep fighting for answers. And there was a doctor that I kept like making appointments with until they ordered a CT scan for me. So then I got the scan done, but she wouldn't do anything about it. And then I took the CT scan elsewhere, and I found a doctor who, like, when he walked in the room, he could tell by the way that I was sitting in a chair that something was off, because I kind of was doing that like W sit position, like with my feet kind of behind me. And he like pulled up the scans and was like, yeah, like, you have miserable malalignment. Like, I can tell by the way you're sitting. I can tell by your scans. I can tell by like the way you move your legs, and how like when I walked, like my feet would go out. Yeah, but it was actually Facebook that led me in the right direction, and I'm so thankful for that, because I don't know if I would have, been able to find the answers without it, because it is a rare condition. I don't know anybody else personally that has miserable malalignment syndrome.
Yeah, they need to rename that, by the way. Anything with it starts with miserable, they need to rename that, but that's just
but it really is like an accurate like name. I'm like, that's how I feel. Like, that's how I felt on a daily basis.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny with MS, they have something called an MS hug, which you think, oh, I would love an MS hug. Worst pain in your life. It's like your whole rib cage and stomach goes into a Charlie horse. But it's called an MS hug. It's like, no, worst pain I've ever had in my life is when I've had the MS hug. Yeah, horrible. But
I have spastic cold. Well, I guess technically now it's called IBS, and so I get those cramps. Like, it's almost like the muscle, like you can literally feel it, and it's like so hard because it's just cramping, like I'm doubled over. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very often to me, but I can only imagine your MS hug pain too. I imagine finally finding a doctor that understood where you're coming from and understood what it is, and was willing to look at you as a whole person and the whole leg, versus somebody that's like, oh, she just doesn't like how her legs work. It had to be an immense relief for you.
It was a breath of fresh air. Oh yeah. It was so validating. Like, all of that pain that I felt. I was 27 when I was diagnosed. Like, all that time, it was definitely, I mean, it was bittersweet in a way. Like, I was very relieved, but at the same time, it was still like a lot ahead of me. And I am considered like older to have these surgeries. Like, a lot of the people in the Facebook group seem to be like parents, like with their kids, their kids are going through it. And I think because miserable malalignment is kind of a newer diagnosis, and sometimes it's not even like a widely accepted diagnosis. I when I was growing up, nobody thought to check, like, not even a pediatrician thought, to look at the alignment of my legs. So when, as a 27-year-old sitting in there, I'm like, ooh, I know that bone healing, the older you get, it gets harder. And even from 27 to 30, I can tell you, yes, it gets harder.
A couple years ago, my husband wanted to give me an MS t-shirt for my birthday. All he could find, though, were brightly colored t-shirts with big graphics, like a smiley face given 2 middle fingers, and words like F U M S. Isn't there an option for a simple, stylish t-shirt that spreads awareness with kindness? That's when I created Spoonful of Strength, shirts that are inspirational, motivational, and stylish. You can find us on Etsy, Instagram, and Facebook at Spoonful of Strength. That's Spoonful with 2 L's. Enter code podcast for 20% off anything in the shop. Now, you recently had another diagnosis of ulnar abutment syndrome. Did I say that right?
I think it's ulnar abutment syndrome.
Abutment syndrome.
And yeah, so that diagnosis is, it's kind of a loose diagnosis at the moment. Like I'm still like trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And I just learned that I'm gonna get more imaging done on my wrists. However, it looks like my ulnas, so the bone in your arm that goes like on your pinky side, they are slightly longer than they should be. And because I have been using crutches for years at this point, because of like recovering from surgeries, and then sometimes like with miserable malalignment, you get maltracking, or it feels like your patellas or your kneecaps are dislocating or like shifting out of place. Like I heavily relied on crutches to get around, and I still do. So my wrists have just been like really bothering me. And because my ulnas are longer, it's jamming up into what's called the TFCC, which is like a space in between your carpals or your hand bones and your forearm bones. And it's causing degeneration and possibly tearing in my wrists.
Is there any connection for those two?
I have no idea, but I'm really curious. I've actually posted in those Facebook groups and I've asked like, hey, does anybody else have, any issues with their arms as well? And I haven't received any responses. So I have no idea if that's a thing or if it was just, my genetics, my luck. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have they come up with is there a treatment plan for that, or you're just so focused on the legs right now that it's?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely focused on the legs first and foremost. However, because like I really do need my wrists, like when I'm recovering from leg surgery.
Right.
I mean, I ended up getting like platforms for my crutches, so I don't have to put weight through my wrist, and like sometimes I'll use a wheelchair too, just to give my wrists a break. They they use the osteotomy word in my appointment just a few weeks ago, and I was just like, oh, can I get through an appointment without hearing the word osteotomy? But basically what they think could be a potential plan, and again, like I don't have anything like set in stone, like I'm actually getting multiple opinions and more imaging, but if that turns out what it really is causing the issues, they would have to shorten my ulna so it won't keep tearing the cartilage in my wrist joint.
Now, you mentioned genetics kind of in passing. This, the miserable malalignment syndrome, is it something that you've had since birth, or like, is it a genetic issue?
I don't know exactly. However, I have just in the few resources that I've come across with, and like even like focusing on the Facebook group and just kind of seeing what people are saying, like I have seen people that have said, like, I think it's genetic because like I have it and my kids have it, or like it does seem to run in families sometimes. In my family, like I'm the only one with these issues, so I really don't know. I also feel like, and again, like I don't really have much of a resource for this, but I mean, kids normally have like version, or like their legs are angled. Um, but as they grow, your legs straighten out, your bones straighten more. So I sometimes wonder, like maybe it was something like with my growth plates, or like mine just didn't straighten. So I'm not exactly sure. And then I've also seen people say that like they feel like they like ended up having miserable malalignment because of a fall or an accident or whatever, and that would cause them to have an osteotomy to like re-straighten their leg. Like it was straight and then something happened and then they had to have the osteotomy. So I've kind of seen different things, but because there isn't that much research out yet, it's fairly, I think miserable malalignment, like that term was created in like the 1970s, which in the healthcare world, that's fairly new because like, yeah, you name it something, but you don't necessarily have like the treatments and the research to back it up at this point. Because definitely like in the 90s, like when I was a kid, it wasn't looked at or talked about. So
Yeah.
Now you said you've had 9 surgeries so far.
yeah.
Have they given you an idea of approximately how many more you may be facing?
It looks like I'll probably need one more osteotomy on my left tibia. I mean, I hope that's not the case, but I'm kind of thinking like my left leg is following a very similar progression as my right leg did. So it looks like I'll need one more osteotomy. And then after that, it's taking out the hardware. So it up to 3, I would say.
Yeah. But well, let me ask this. Let me turn this around a little bit. The surgeries that you've gone through, I could only imagine, as Tina said, the broken or the bones in the legs are so hard to recover from. And I'm sure so painful. Have you come out of the other end? And I know you're not quite there yet, but you're making progress. Have you realized how strong you really are? Like, has that surprised you?
I mean, I definitely have my moments. Like sometimes I look back at all I've been through and I'm proud. Like first of all, to be like dealing with that kind of pain for so long and not say anything and be as active as I was, that in itself is strong. But then to go through these bone breaking surgeries, that's been hard too. But then I also feel like I still really struggle mentally. I'm actually in therapy. I'm proud to say I'm in therapy, to help me process these things. And I think like I have learned in therapy that, mentally I am strong. Like even though I don't always realize it sometimes, I absolutely have my moments every single day where it's hard. It's really hard to get through, but I do it, and I'm learning to turn like all of the pain that I have felt my whole life into a purpose. And I think that's like where, writing a book has like really stemmed for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want to use everything that I learned, and I want to use my strength like to help other people too.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so many times we've heard that. Can't you say, Tina, that I mean, like that when you go through something like that, you want to try and find something good to come out of it. And it sounds like writing your book is going to be a good way for you to have that purpose and everything. So I'm excited for you. How far are you into it? Are you just starting?
No, I've been working on it for about a year now. Like I'm I am taking my time because it is my baby. Um, I actually have like I think it's 10 chapters now in the like pre-final stages. So I'm working with an editor and I mean I have a lot written, but like 10 chapters are almost solid at this point. So that's really exciting that that's kind of coming to an end. And the book, I'll say this, the book like is only really covering my right leg or like childhood and my right leg. So like all
Oh,
the
wow.
things that are going on with my left leg now, like I don't really touch on just because like it has been so much.
That'll be
Yeah.
in book 2, right?
I was going to say that's the
Exactly, book
sequel.
2.
Yeah, you have to let us know when that finally gets published because we want to continue with your story and everything, and you have to let us know
Absolutely.
so that we can share that. I'd love to read it.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. We can save it on our page or share it on our page and everything. So,
Awesome.
yeah, that's great.
What have you learned from the journey?
I have learned, first and foremost, to tap into my body and tap into my mind and listen to how it's feeling physically. And that means that I have to be present, with how I'm feeling in the moment. But I've also learned to like appreciate and learn from my past and all the things that taught me, but also to keep like looking forward and making things happen in your future because like there was a time that I just completely like gave up and I didn't really see a future. Like this is my life of pain and it's terrible and all those thoughts. However, like when I start to think that way, I want to remember that there's still so much for the future.
Is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't talked about? Maybe.
I would definitely say to like one of the biggest pieces of advice is to advocate for yourself. I mean, I can't stress that enough. The first surgeon that I had, I like didn't get a good feeling from him from the very beginning. He, looked at my hip and was just kind of like, ah, yeah, you have a torn labrum, you have an impingement, like we can fix it, or we don't have to, you're not dying, like kind of said things like that. And that did not sit well with me. He told me that I was going to fail my occupational therapy boards. Because like this happened like right after I graduated from OT school. And I was ready to take my boards so I could get my license, but like I knew I needed the surgery. So in my head, I was like, well, I'll have the surgery first. And like while I'm recovering, I'm going to use that time to study. And then I'll take my boards when I'm more recovered. And yeah, he told me that no, like the surgery is brutal. I'm not like if you have the surgery before, you're gonna fail. And I was just like in my head, I'm like, what? But I didn't listen to that gut feeling like that this didn't feel right. And so I ended up having the surgery anyway. And I don't feel like he did a very good job on the surgery. Like I was actually told by another surgeon that I went to later that like the hip joint looked worse than like my imaging before I even had the surgery. Um, so one, like listen to your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it's not right. Don't go with it and find somebody else who works for you and who listens to you and looks at you as a whole person. I know like we mentioned that earlier. But like somebody like whether it's a surgeon, like any medical professional, that they are also in alignment with your goals and what you want in life. So the surgeon that I'm working with now, like he is on board with me running again. Like that has become kind of his goal too. So
Awesome.
yeah, definitely finding somebody who fits your story, who fits your, who walks with you on this health journey. Yeah, I feel like that's a big one. And then also I'm going to put this in as an occupational therapist to make sure that you find meaningful things in your life. Um, I think like for me personally, like running was that meaningful thing for me. And when I couldn't do it anymore, I had to find something else. And I kind of went through a period of time where I just like I didn't find anything else because I thought running was the only thing that I wanted to do or that I was meant to do. But there are other things out there, and just make sure that you fill your day with meaningful things, whether you're, recovering from a surgery or you have a chronic illness. Find something that works for you.
Beautiful.
It's been an interesting story to it's amazing how many different things people go through, and you never know. But I know I had issues with my hips. Yeah. And actually I'm almost wrapping up physical therapy. So, and that was just for the past year or so. I just can't imagine that pain, and dealing with something like that your entire life is just so frustrating. Do you feel that in the early days, that some of the original surgeons that you try, or the doctors that you went to trying to find the answers, do you feel like you were discounted because you were so young?
Yes. Yes. Um, I also think that it was very easy for some of them to say, well, just don't run again. Or just don't work out, just don't hike, just don't like do all the things you love to do. Like
Right.
that's like the easy answer. And I wasn't looking for an easy answer. I was looking for a solution. So, I could do those things. Um, I definitely think though, like age played a role in it, especially with the comment of like, oh, like you just want your legs straightened so they look different, so they look
So they
straight.
look nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like,
So you look
no,
like everybody else. Yeah.
right. That wasn't, yeah. At that point, I definitely did not care. Like, when I was younger, like when I was a teenager, I definitely was like trying to stand so I didn't look different. In my
Hmm.
20s, honestly, I was just like, I don't really care about how they look. I care about how they feel.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The teenagers are tough though, because you feel so self-conscious about
Right.
everything, going through so much as a teenager in general, and then that on top of it.
Right. I mean, I definitely like look back on like pictures and I try to see like, oh, could I like if I look at this picture, can I tell that I have miserable malalignment? And I have like formal dance pictures in high school where my legs are very crooked and you can tell, or like, yearbook pictures on the tennis team. I can see it. I can see
Yeah.
it. Like it was there. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Tell us where people can find you. So if they want to follow your journey, or if maybe they're going through something similar, that they can reach out to you and all of that, on social media.
Sure. So I mostly use Instagram. I'm at aligned K and then the number 8. And I'm usually pretty good about responding on there. So, and then I
Yeah.
also, I guess this is also might be valuable. I did write a personal like a story on something called Miles for Hips, like miles and then number 4 and then hips. It's a fantastic website. They like have a bunch of stories, like, personal experiences from people that have hip dysplasia or have had like total hip replacements. I think there are a few miserable malalignment syndromes on there now. But that's an extremely helpful resource. And like you can find such a great sense of community there as well. But my personal story is on there, and then there's so many other stories that are just like amazing to read. If you have like any kind of hip condition, I find it to be a very helpful resource.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're just so happy that you took time out to be here.
No, and I appreciate you doing this too, because like, it's things like this that, somebody might listen to one of your podcasts and be like, oh, like this is what I've been experiencing. I just didn't have, a name for it, or I didn't know, how to advocate for what I needed. So
Yep.
thank you for
absolutely.
doing this for others too.
Oh, that's
Or
sweet.
even
That's
just finding
sweet.
the resources of, like you said, finding your surgeon that finally
Right.
listened.
Well, what a great interview.
Yeah, she was good.
I think I've read that like the femur broken bones are like one of the most painful things to go through. I mean, like right up there with like childbirth and things like that. So I cannot believe the pain she's probably had to endure.
Right. I know. Just a couple weeks ago on Facebook Memories from just last year, I was talking about how I was in a walking group, like a high school friends. We were all on this walking challenge. And so I was walking like, 3 miles, tried to get into like 3 miles a day. But then like on Facebook Memories, it popped up that I had to take a break because my hips were bothering me so bad. And I'm like, huh. It's funny how you like don't even realize that like until you sometimes when you look back on Facebook or whatever, you're like, oh, I forgot I've been dealing with that. And I was dealing with that way longer than I thought.
Yeah, she's definitely to have a positive attitude for all that she's been through, and to see how many surgeries she's got behind her and how many more she's got
Yeah.
ahead of her. I just wish that
I
she
just,
can get everything taken care of and be able to, start running again. And I'm happy that her doctor's kind of on board with that.
yeah, I'm glad. And like I said, I'm glad I mentioned when we were talking to her that I was very glad that she has the right mindset of, I want to start running again, but she's already come to terms that that there's going to be adjustments to be able to do it.
Yeah. And she seems very good about listening to her body and not pushing harder than she knows she
Yeah.
can, which a
Yeah.
lot of us struggle with, me included,
Yeah.
with chronic illness.
Yeah, I do. There was one day a couple weeks ago, I was feeling really good and I cleaned and cleaned and cleaned, like cleaned and decluttered and everything. And then like the next day I was like hoping to be able to go. It was the classic, we've talked about it before, of like
Yeah.
you saving those spoons and not using them all up just because you feel like you can. And like I was like, okay, tomorrow I'm feeling so good that tomorrow I'm gonna clean this room. And then the next day I'm gonna finally be ready to actually steam clean all my floors because we have wooden floors here. And I didn't get anything else done like the rest of the week. I literally the next day I woke up and I just laid on the couch. I was like so done from the day before that I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." It's like, when
It's
am I
almost
gonna
like
learn? When am I gonna learn?
it's almost like you sit there and you're like got your fingers crossed and your feet crossed and your toes crossed, going, please, please, I don't want to feel this tomorrow. And
Yep,
thinking
yep,
that it's gonna be different. But
yeah.
unfortunately for a lot of us, it's the same old.
This week has been a little quieter, so I've been working in my craft room trying to get it all like decluttered and destash some items that I'm not planning on carrying anymore and that type of thing. But I've actually been pretty proud of myself this week of only doing it in small, couple hour increments, and then which
Mhm.
actually isn't really too much of a push considering my attention span these days.
Right, right. Oh
I'll be
my
like,
gosh.
oh, I'm gonna go put this on the dining room table, and then it's like an hour later, I'm going back in there to work on more stuff because I got, oh look,
Yeah.
butterfly,
Yeah. I did pretty good. I told myself I wanted to stay out for a week. and my surgery was on a Tuesday. And it wasn't until Saturday that I picked up my laptop and started just looking at stuff and posting on Instagram maybe once or twice a day. But I couldn't do it. But I'm ready to come back. And we've got we're nearing the end of our first season. Can you believe it?
I know, it doesn't seem like it. Was funny because I was looking back on when we started. It seems like we just started it. It does not seem like we've been doing this as long as we have already.
Well, this is episode number 23 for us, and we only have 6 left. So it will, and we're going to take a much needed break, and then we're going to definitely come back. We've got so many more stories to tell from everyone out there. So we won't be going anywhere forever.
But, just a small break. And actually the thing is it really won't be a break for us. We'll just be working behind the scenes on planning the next season of
that's right. It'll be let's do this and
As always, thank you all so much for joining us on our podcast. Tune in on Thursday when we will be chatting with Danny, and she'll be talking about her rheumatoid arthritis journey and diagnosis. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will chat with you on Thursday.